So the register is available online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is a scheduled maintenance window from 10 PM to 1 AM, I think it is, on Thursday night. So if you're trying to do something in those hours and it's not working, that's probably why it's under maintenance. It is basically a notice board, and that's all it is. It doesn't determine the validity of a security agreement. Anybody can put something up on this notice board, and all it does is to alert people who might be dealing with somebody that there is a security interest out there. There are fees associated with it. The fee for doing a search of the register is $3.70 to search against somebody to find out if there are security interests registered against them. And to do a registration costs $7.40 if the registration is for a period of up to 7 years. And then the costs go up from there. If you want to do a registration that lasts forever, it's over $130. But most people choose to register for up to 7 years because they think, well, I probably won't need this registration beyond then anyway. The register follows the legislation, and so it, in general, it won't let you do something that the legislation won't allow you to do. So this, now we're getting on to actually taking a look at the register itself, what the register actually looks like. So this is available obviously through the internet, and if you go to the website www.ppsr.gov.au, that website is an informational website. It's got lots of information about how to use the register, but there's a link that you can click on to take you to the actual, what this is, which is the actual transactional website where you do transactions. So in order to, what I'm going to demonstrate or take you through is, first of all, doing a registration. And first of all, in order to make a registration, the register needs to know who the secured party is. So step one is actually creating something called a secured party group. And a secured party group is really a fancy terminology for a set of information about the secured party. So that's the first step. So if we click on Create Group, it'll give you the option to create a new secured party group, and you just click the radio buttons as they go. This example, you can choose the secured party to be an individual or an organisation. So in this one, we'll choose an organisation. And when you choose these buttons, the register, various options will sort of open up depending on what you select. So if you choose organisation, it'll ask you if the organisation has an Australian company number and some of these other organisational numbers. So if we say yes to that, you then fill in contact details, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Name and address, email address. And there's a requirement to put in an address for service. Now this is the address that if anybody wants to contact you, the secured party, about the registration to find out what this is all about, this is the address that they will use. If you want to, you can just use the same details and click use the secured party details in the address for service. And then if you do that, then you don't have to fill it all in again. It just uses your contact details. The system will then give you an opportunity to check that the name and address and the email address are all correct. And you review that and click Save. And the system will then send an email to the address for service. And it'll attach a document which says you've created this new security party group and here's the number of it, and it'll give you a series of characters, which is basically a password, which will enable you to view registrations, view security interest registrations against that security party group in the future. So with these emails that the system sends you, we recommend that you do keep those in a safe place, because you might need to refer to them again in the future. So the system will ask a few questions about the security interest. The first question is it a commercial or a consumer registration? Most times people would be making consumer registrations, a commercial registration. Commercial registrations cover everything other than just an individual buying something for their personal or household use. So if you're selling to a shop, a gallery or something, and the property is going to be used as part of that business, that would be a commercial registration. It'll then ask if it's a transitional or not transitional, and that question refers to whether the security agreement came into force before the 30th of January this year or after. So for this example, we'll choose not transitional. It'll then ask who the secured party is, and it asks that by reference to that concept I mentioned before of the secured party group. So because we've come directly from the secured party group screen, it already knows who the secured party is. But if you if you'd already done your secured party group and you'd done one registration against Gallery A, and then you came back a couple of months later and to do one against Gallery B, well, you would just type in your secured party group number, and that will bring those details up. So we're now down to the next question, which is what is the collateral class? As I mentioned at the outset, personal property covers a whole range of different types of property. And you can see there, you can register circuit layouts and copyright and design and all sorts of things. Tangible property is one that probably you'd be most interested in the context of an artwork transaction. And there's an option, there's a few specific kinds of property, and there's also an option for other goods. So if we select other goods, I should mention that all present and after acquired property, that's mainly used by financiers who are just taking a security interest over everything. So a bank lending to a business, who's the major lender of the business, might use something like that. So if we select other goods, there's then an option to describe what those other goods are. And with the description, it's really, as I mentioned before, it's just a notice board, it's just to alert people. So you don't have to go into huge amounts of detail in there, and in fact you can't, because I think it only gives you 500 characters. So you wouldn't need to describe in a great amount of detail all the different types of, if we're dealing with artwork, for example, you wouldn't necessarily want to name every work and date every work. All you would need to do would be to say that your security interest is over artwork, or maybe get a bit more specific, painting, sculpture, whatever. So provided that that it alerts people to the kind of thing that the security interest is over, that's all that this register is designed to do. It's not designed to get into the real nitty-gritty of every detail. In order for that to happen, what people who are interested need to do is get in touch with the secured party and ask. And there are provisions in the Act that require you to respond if they do ask. So this next screen, this is a little bit technical, but one box in particular is very, very important, and that is this purchase money security interest box. I talked a little bit about before about this purchase money security interest idea, and so if the security interest is to secure the repayment of purchase monies, and a lot of times a retention of title arrangement or a consignment arrangement would be in that category, it's really important that that box is ticked. If you don't tick that box, it'll still be a valid security interest, but you don't get the benefit of those extra super priority, it's called. You don't get the benefit of the super priority. There is, however, a risk associated with ticking that box, because if you tick it and it's not a security interest that is really a purchase money security interest, well, then the legislation says that the whole registration is ineffective. So that, to me, that's probably the most important actual question on this whole thing is this a purchase money security interest or not? And so it's probably, if people are actually getting advice about agreements and so forth, that's one of the questions to ask, you know. Has this been drafted in a way that it gives me a purchase money security interest? The next couple of questions are around whether the collateral is inventory, and if it is, whether it's subject to control. Those questions are, what that goes to is whether it's equivalent to what's called a fixed asset or a circulating asset. I don't want to get into too much of that tonight, but the question around inventory is fairly self-explanatory. It's possible to subordinate your registration to another registration. Again, that's a fairly technical device which allows you to deliberately put your registration underneath another one in terms of priority if you want to. And the final box is around proceeds. Most people would say, would claim proceeds, because without proceeds, then if the property itself is destroyed or sold or something else, then you're left with no security interest at all. And the box there is to describe what kind of proceeds you want to claim. The default setting is all types of proceeds, and most people will want to leave that alone because they won't care if the proceeds is in the form of an insurance payment or cash, or if the property's been swapped for some other property. They don't really mind, they just want to make sure that they have an interest in those proceeds, whatever it is. The next box, the giving of notice identifier, that's really for, it's basically just a box that you can write a reference number for your own use. And if you put something in there, you don't have to put something in there, but if you do, then anybody that's communicating with you about the registration has to use that file number or reference or whatever it is.
So do you make the number up, or?
Yeah, you can make it up. So you might just have some kind of a system. I mean, banks obviously would use that because they have thousands or hundreds of thousands of different registrations, and they have their own filing system behind that. But yeah, you can make it up. You don't have to.
Or it would be, if you had an agreement, it would be the number on the agreement. You could use that, but otherwise you would just make it up.
Sure. Yeah. So you can put in there whatever you like. And the earlier registration number, that's a fairly technical option that allows you to say that this registration is actually linked to an earlier registration, so that people are put on notice that the same collateral is covered by an earlier registration. It's probably not something that you would get into a lot unless you're using the register an awful lot and making registrations a lot. I talked about the duration before, and the important thing to note there is that the longer you make the registration, the more expensive it's going to be. So in this case, although anything from 0 to 7 years is the same price. Once you go beyond 7 years, it gets more expensive. So now we've got to the point of we've finished describing the collateral, so we know the register knows all about what the security interest is over, and now the final piece of the puzzle is, well, who is granting the security interest? So we need to enter the grantor details. And so these questions are pretty much the same as the questions about the secured party. It asks, is it an individual or an organisation? So for the purpose of the example, we say it's an organisation which has an Australian company number or ACN. We can type that in, and then you get to basically the review stage, where you can view on screen all of the options you've selected. So you review that, and if you're happy that all those options are the way you want them, you click register, and then it will ask you for some money. There's the payment by credit card. If you are using the register a lot, there are options to set up an account so that it won't ask you for money every time. You can prepay, or you can pay on. You can get a monthly invoice or something like that. But if you're not using the register very much, you can just pay as you go using credit card. Once you've paid, you'll get an email to the address for service, and this is it'll give you the number of the registration and what's called a token, which again is like a password, which enables you to go in and change the registration. Again, you should store these in a safe place. It'll also, in a separate email sent at the same time, the system will also send you a statement which contains all the details of the registration, and it's a requirement that you actually give a copy of that to the grantor or the borrower, etc. You'll notice that up until now we haven't actually had to ask the grantor or get the consent of the grantor or get the grantor to sign or do anything, except for the written agreement part. But in terms of the registration, you can just get on the system and do it, and you notify them basically after the event.